So, as you can see, we are moving a bunch of stuff around in our house. It's like amazingly empty in here right now. Because we're going to be refinishing our floors. You can see they're actually pretty much bare wood. If you look at this. This spot's kind of shiny because there's a lot of traffic there. But everywhere else it's just kind of matte. There's like no finish on it. There's spots like this. That's probably not going to come out when we sand it down even quite a ways, because that just stained really deep since the wood was unprotected. We've decided that it's kind of fine to live with that though, if that's in the final finish of the room.
It'll be okay.
Yep, we think it'll be fine.
There might be like a couch or a rug covering this one, or like a piece of furniture covering that one.
Yeah, or if it's there, it's kind of part of the character of the house, you know. I think that they had tack strip going along here and carpet in this room at one time. And then I'm guessing they ripped the carpet out because I think the people had animals in here. This floor has obviously got finish on it, and it's still in pretty good shape. We're still going to sand it down so that it matches the original, or the rest of the house, and kind of flows better. We're also going to be redoing the floors in the other room over here. So we'll be doing all this, all the way over into this room. This room just has 4-inch pine boards, so it'll be, or maybe they're 3-inch. Be interesting to see how that comes out. There's a lot of surface damage to the floor. Piano is really loud. We'll see how hard this stuff is to get off. It's possible that this will be really eating up the 36 grit sandpaper, just because there's so much varnish, but I'm hoping to only use up like 2 on this floor. And then in here, I think it's gonna take like 1. For prep work, all you really need to do is move everything off of the floor, clean it, and then get rid of everything that you don't want to get dusty. So yeah, you can see a lot of the floor just is like scratched up and peeling. So this is why we're gonna resand it. It looks like when they redid it last time, whoever was using the edger did pretty good, but there's some spots that are deeper. Never perfect. There's always lots of character in hardwood floors. So the sander that we're using, we rented from Menards. This is their floor sander. It's pretty simple to operate. This is the paper, 36 grit. This is like the really rough stuff that takes a lot of material off. And it really does take a lot of material off. Like, you don't want to stop moving this thing, you want to continually move it. Otherwise, you'll have like a wavy floor, which is scary. So put this on here, slide it on over these rubber fingers, and these rubber fingers are cut such that when the machine actually runs, they grip the paper a lot harder. And to engage the system, push it down, and then that's going to be contacting the floor with the weight of the machine. So that'll like push it down. So you pull it up when you want to stop sanding. Go ahead and put on our ear protection, and because it'll probably be pretty dusty. We also turned our furnace to off so that it doesn't suck all that dust into our ductwork. Flip this on. It actually doesn't kick up much dust since it collects it into that bag. You can see I was going kind of crooked. When I take it out off of that floor, I try to lift up the sander while I'm scooting back so that it doesn't have any like significant variance between switching floors. I'm quite impressed actually at how quickly that's coming off. Sandpaper also looks really clean, so it's not a sticky varnish, so that's gonna save a lot on sandpaper. I'm gonna have to come back along with the edger and fix this up where we can't quite reach. Wow, when I first dropped that, it actually made like a really deep divot. That is bad. You don't want to do that. Look at this, honey.
Oh no.
Feel it, it's really bad.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so you have to keep it moving right when you start it. That 36 grit is just like eating it off so fast. So we're gonna continue sanding.
I'm scared to do it. I don't want to make craters.
Well,
our floor.
you probably won't do any worse than me, it looks like.
Well, that's not comforting.
We're gonna be doing 3 different grits. Start with the 36, move to the 60, and then go to the 80 grit, and that'll be our last pass. So when you're doing these long passes that go through a doorway, obviously you can just continue through past the door. But when you're up against a wall, then you have to go halfway. So we're just gonna do this half of the room with the grain, and then we're gonna do this half of the room with the grain, because you can't get those long passes. So this is the edger. This thing is also pretty simple to operate. It's got 2 handles. It has this guard that protects your like trim and sidewalls from the spinning disc that actually has your sandpaper on it. And yeah, it just holds that disc at a mild angle so that it digs in more on one side than the other. And you can just kind of take the corners off. I'll demonstrate that here for you. It's good to keep the sander moving or lift it off the floor when you turn it off so you don't dig into pits. But you can just kind of even out that space between where the big sander was and where your sander is. We were really surprised, but that bag already filled up once with wood shavings. We already dumped this one out once too. It's been about 2 hours since we started. Here's how this room is looking. We're pretty happy with it. It should, the tone and like that like choppiness should kind of come out as we continue sanding the floor. And down this edge, the oak is just really nice looking. I'm really happy with how it looks. This stuff, it's gonna be interesting to see if this comes out. This is some sort of like water damage stain. I think that they had carpet in here, so maybe a dog peed there and then it just soaked in, made this funky map. But there was one over here and I can't even find it now. It was like right here, I think. And that's like all that's left of it, I guess. So it appears that that first 1/8 of an inch that we're taking off is, yeah, really coming off good.
That one looks really uncomfortable. The one that you're doing looks very uncomfortable for your back.
I thought you were saying my mask looks uncomfortable.
No, well, it does.
That
but
too?
not for your back.
Yeah, the edger is kind of hard on your back because you're like, doing a toe touch across the entire perimeter of the living room for like 2 hours. So we're about 3 hours in.
Not too bad.
If it's 3 hours, if it's about 3 hours per layer, we're gonna be here for 6 more hours working. So we better keep going. We still have that much of the first layer to do, but it's really going good and we're really liking it. It looks really good.
Super excited about it.
Huh?
I'm super excited to see what it looks like when it's all done and also when it's finished.
Yeah, me too. This whole room, pretty much, well, some of it we can get with that thing. Most of it we're just having to get with the edger. I just pulled off the little strip that goes between the floorings. So I could sand up into there. We'll have to use a triangular sander to get up in those corners and just kind of finish out some of this stuff just because the edger won't do it. But we won't do that probably till tomorrow because we want to use the sanders while we have them rented. So yeah, it is looking good. We moved on to the 60 grit. So we got it all the way down to the final grit. You can kind of see a little bit where the edger and the main floor meet. As long as that's not actually like too wavy, which this is pretty smooth. So it's just a difference in the way the grain was twisted. But as long as it's not actually like hills of sanding height difference, you should be okay to just use a piece of sandpaper and kind of smooth that out. Seems like for the most part we were able to keep it divot free. Certainly not perfect, but wood floors are kind of that way. So we're really, really happy with it. And I can't believe how well, remember there was all that nasty stuff right there? That came right out. And like there was some drops of stuff over here, came right out. I'm really surprised. I just expected that stuff to stay in a little better. Same thing in here, we were able to get it all smoothed out. This floor ended up being a little bit wavier because it's a softer wood. I think it's maple. I thought it was pine originally, but it's because of the stain. But I think it might be some kind of maple. So it's just really soft, you know? And the sander will bite into it really quickly. So you have to just move it fast and make multiple passes rather than slowly. And last night at 2 in the morning when we were still sanding, we kind of ran into that a little bit as a problem because we were going too slow. And that was causing it to eat out inconsistent amounts of wood on the top surface. So just make sure you move like pretty quickly. So like we're moving at like this pace is a really good pace, and then just do multiple coats on the room. So this room we did like the 60 grit twice, so 36 grit once, 60 grit twice, and then we did the 80 grit like 3 times almost. I still have the sanders, so I'm actually going to sand down this little chunk of wood at the top of our basement stairs because it had that nasty like flower print vinyl stuff from like the 70s, and I just figured I might as well sand it down since I have the edger here. Probably only going to use the edger though because you can't really get the big one on this little spot. That's one thing I'm really excited about. This house smelled kind of just old, and after we get this all sealed up, it's gonna just feel brand new and smell brand new. I just put one of these 50 grit ones on this thing right here. It's actually not technically the right one, but I didn't see any that were marked for Milwaukee. But it's pretty much the right thing, and it works really good. Really takes it down. So I'll just run the 50 on it for a while and then move up with the other sandpaper to get it to match the floor, which is at 80. So we got this whole floor vacuumed 3 times, I think, and then wiped down with a damp rag, which is why I'm out of breath. So we're about to actually apply a little bit of this Varathane. We've just been very carefully stirring it to avoid mixing any bubbles into it with this paint stir stick that used to be trim. Probably not the best thing to use, but I cleaned it up so there weren't any pieces coming off, and so I think it's fine. We're going to just go ahead and slowly soak our brush. I don't want to create any turbulence that would produce bubbles.
These are the cleanest these floors will ever be, probably.
Probably. I'm just going to start here. That way. Just touch the trim. And just kind of make a plan for how you're going to escape the room. So Larissa is cutting in on the edges where the brush didn't quite get. And then I'm going to go in one more time and finish it out. We're liking it so far. It's using up more of the varnish than I kind of expected. But I think this first coat is going to absorb into the floor a lot more than the subsequent coats. So it probably won't take as much on the next coats. Super liking how it's going to be on the oak here. It's coming out to be a much more red than we expected, don't you think? Mm-hmm. Like it's almost like a red floor. And like this board right here, look how like red it's staining. It's really neat. We probably will sand between either the last coat or, I don't know, we'll see as it goes. Yeah, or this coat, or between all the coats. But yeah, really happy. We opened windows, so we have a nice gentle cross breeze through the house. So we have returned after how many hours? It's been like 5 hours. And it looks very good. We're super happy about it. It is definitely rough though. Like, feeling it is, I'm surprised at how rough it feels. So we're thinking to sand it lightly now and then do the next coat. And I'll just use like a sander. I really should get a pole sander. I don't know if we have one at the shop though. It lightened up some more, which we're also really happy about. I think it looks amazing. This is where we haven't sanded it yet. And it's like,
Feels like sandpaper.
It's really rough. Yeah, it feels like sandpaper. That's a good description. And then over here where I sanded it, it's like nice and smooth. So you can see it does come off with a little bit of dust. And that means it is dry enough to sand just a little bit. I'm just using 120 grit on one of these little sand screens. I'm just basically just hitting it that much to knock off that little bit of roughness. And then we'll have to vacuum it and probably wipe it down with a damp rag and then put the next layer on. The next coat's going on. Any spots that I see just like a little fuzzy or speck of wood or something that ended up in the finish, I've just been taking it off and wiping it on my sock.
I've been wiping it on the trim.
No, really?
I'm just kidding.
Naughty, naughty. So, we added another coat this morning. I didn't record any of that. And then I let it dry. It's like 4 in the afternoon, so we let it dry for quite a while. We sanded it lightly again, so it's really nice and smooth and quite shiny. You can kind of see some of the bumpiness from the drum sander. I think in hindsight, I would recommend using a Rotary Sander, just because it's a lot easier to get a really smooth, flat, like sanding. Anyway, after we got it sanded down, we vacuumed it, and now we're going to add our 4th coat. And possibly that'll be our last coat. We haven't fully decided yet if we want to do 5 coats or 6 coats. So this is the 4th coat, and we were talking about it. I think we're just going to do 4 coats. Stop there. But yeah, we're just kind of going in swaths. So we'll do out to basically this vent. So from the wall out to about there, that outlet, and then from that outlet out to that edge. And then we kind of do that section and exit through that door. We already did that room. And obviously we can't go anywhere that the floors are wet for a couple hours. So the floor is completely cured now. We've moved everything back in on the floor, including that beast. But between each room we added, well, I guess between the rooms that had different flooring, we added these metal strips. And that seems like it's gonna work really good. You know, you can buy these at Menards. They sell them in like 12-foot lengths. And you just tap them on. This had about a 1/2-inch lip going up toward the kitchen, if you see there, but we just put it on at an angle and no problems there. Over here in between the bathroom floor and the living room floor, we just did the same thing. We did not put anything between our bedroom and out here because we're planning to put carpet or something in there. And this old stuff that was put on in the 70s is like super glued to the floor, so it's not peeling up anyway. Had that come off really easy, we actually might have refinished this floor too, because it's got the same wood as the room over here. You know, just that light colored. I'm thinking now maybe it's birch, but if you can tell what this kind of fine-grained stuff is, comment down below, because it didn't really smell like pine. I thought it was pine at first, and then I thought maybe it was like maple, but it's so soft when you're sanding it that now I think it's maybe birch. So, I don't know. If you know what it is, comment down below. The floor ended up becoming like a pretty light color. You can see it didn't stay that weird red that we were kind of seeing at first when we were adding the finish. But this one board right here stayed really dark, and then the one next to it is actually kind of a red tone. So when you're doing water-based polyurethanes like what we did, sometimes it can draw natural oils and things out of the wood and change color a little bit, but mostly you're going to get whatever color the wood actually is. And that's exactly what we have in this instance. Because it dries perfectly clear, you're just going to see whatever the wood looks like. So if you look at these 4 right here, we've got like a super light, a little bit darker, dark with interesting wood grain, and then this super dark one. Over here, where that tack strip went across, you can see the nail holes ended up staying there, but that's some more of our fun character, so we're not concerned about that. Then you can see a couple spots we do have some divots, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about the options that you have for sanders. They make a sander that's called a Rotary Sander. It has 3 discs that spin in a circle. Each disc spins, and then all 3 of the discs also spin in a circle. And those are really good for sanding the floor completely flat. I wasn't really aware of them. I had always grown up using the drum sander like what we used in the video. But when I was returning the drum sanders, I was talking to a guy and he was explaining to me about how the rotary sanders will make your floor end up being a lot flatter if you're not super good at moving the drum sander at a really steady pace, really quickly, you know, along the floor the entire time. Then it's maybe a better option to use a rotary sander. So I actually told this to one of our friends, and that's what he ended up using on his floor, was a rotary sander, and he said it worked really terrific, and he was able to sand his floors down super flat, and it looked really good. So that's a good option to explore if you have that available, so that you don't get any, you know, little divots. The one other thing that Larissa mentioned that I forgot to mention was if your floors have a really thick layer of, say, paint or some kind of finish on them, you're going to need to remove a lot of that tough material that's on the surface. And using a drum sander takes a lot of material off in a short amount of time, and it'll end up taking a lot less time than using the orbital sander. But if your floors have not very much finish, like ours did, then you can maybe get away with using the orbital sander. But that drum sander is really good for just tearing off a ton of material. So there are
go in and use the orbital sander after using the drum sander too, to smooth it out.
Yep.
Like
smooth out the top surface after you get everything off, you know, back down to the bare wood. But yeah, there are definitely situations where the drum sander is going to be your better option, but that's something to be aware of, that there are 2 different options, and they both kind of have their strengths and weaknesses. So anyway, hope that you enjoyed this video, and we know it was a good project to do, and we're very pleased that we chose to do it. And I would encourage you that if you're considering doing this yourself, it is really not as hard as it seems, just a lot of work. So hope you enjoyed, and we'll talk to you in the next video.